Morning, everybody. Welcome to Malibu, and a car I've wanted to drive for a while in order to answer one particularly important question. Can you get an Urus for less than the price of an Urus? The thing about the Lamborghini Urus is that it is so obviously platform shared with lesser vehicles like the Volkswagen Atlas and the Audi Q8. And Audi has an RS version. Now, this thing has been out for 2 years. It's not exactly a new car, but we don't see a lot of them on the road. We don't hear a lot about them. And here in Los Angeles, the Urus is everywhere. They're all over the place. I mean, you go to a mall, you go to a high-end restaurant, valet, you go down Rodeo Drive, you go to Mount. There's Uruses everywhere. Skittles, all the Uruses you could ever imagine. And when I drove the Urus, it was a nice car. I like driving it. It drives objectively very well, but it's also insanely expensive for what you get. It's $200,000. And the one I tested was $275,000. And I distinctly remember that for that amount of money, I didn't get radar cruise control, which I was like personally insulted by. This RSQ8 is fundamentally the same vehicle. Okay, it has the same 4-liter twin-turbo V8. Here it makes 591 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque, which is down 50 and 37 versus the Urus, respectively. It has the same 8-speed gearbox, the same active differential. Lamborghini won't tell you it's the same, but it's pretty much the same. Obviously, all-wheel drive, the same 48-volt mild hybrid system. The RSQ8 will do 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. The Urus, 3.2. This will do the quarter mile in 11.6 at 119, and that's 0.2 of a second and 2 miles an hour slower than the Urus. And I've done enough drag racing to be able to tell you that you cannot actually feel that. If you don't have a stopwatch, there is no difference. They then have the same top speed of 190 miles an hour. They have the same 17-inch front ceramic brakes, the same 14.5-inch rear ceramic brakes, the same air suspension, although it's tuned differently. The RSQ8 weighs 200 pounds more than the Urus, and this thing will do a 742 around the Nürburgring, which is the same time as a Porsche 997 GT3 did it in 2010, the same as a Lamborghini Murcielago SV did it in 2010. It's the same time as a Porsche Cayman GT4 or a C6 Corvette ZR1. That's in a 5,300 pound SUV. It is not the fastest SUV around the Nürburgring. That honor right now goes to the Cayenne Turbo GT, which also shares a platform with this and does a 733.9. But this vehicle, as tested, is $144,000, which is about 60% of the price of the Urus I tested. 60% for what is almost the same vehicle. So let's see what your 60% gets you. Guys, just want to take a quick second and thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. As I've talked about a million times in the show, I have been going to therapy for over 20 years. Half my life I have been in therapy since just after I get out of college. And it is really important. It's helped me through some tough times, whether I was talking about getting off of weed, the loss I just experienced last week with my brother-in-law, problems with my family, my parents, problems at work. I have really figured out how to deal with a lot of issues, and it's really important. And once the pandemic started in 2020, my in-person therapy very rapidly became online therapy. And now I know that online therapy is just as good, if not better, than in-person therapy because it saves me time and I don't have to physically be in the same spot. I can do my weekly online therapy from anywhere else in the world. And with BetterHelp, it solves a real problem. How do I find a therapist I like? In traditional therapy, starting from zero is very, very tough. But with BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with an enormous range of issues. And to get started, all you do is answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via phone calls, text messages, or video calls. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. And if your therapist isn't the right fit, which can totally happen, and I've been through a couple different ones myself, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge with BetterHelp. That's a super important feature. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality that you get from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, the flexibility of scheduling, a more affordable price, and the ability to do it from anywhere at any time. And now you can get 10% off your first month from BetterHelp by going to betterhelp.com/smokingtire or click the link in the video description. And thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. So let's see what your 60% gets you. We're going to go into dynamic mode. We will activate our manual transmission by moving over there. Yes, we are in manual. All right, let's do a launch. And go. Fairly undramatic, but ooh, power shifting third gear. Gave it a little bit of a kick there. We've got Continental summer tires in 22 inches on this thing. Audi was a little worried because, as you may have read, there was snow on our normal mountain, and they did not want me taking the RSQ8 out in the snow. And I don't blame them. This thing on these tires would probably suck in the snow. So that is a totally defensible position for Audi to take. And I don't want to go in the snow in it anyway. If it had snow tires on it, absolutely. What I can tell you about this car right away, as we get stuck behind the truck, is it is comfort tuned. Okay, you can't, just because a car shares a powertrain and a platform doesn't mean there aren't decisions that you can make that control how the car behaves. It is tuned for comfort. It is tuned for really long-range cruising. When Lamborghini builds a vehicle, they tune it for maximum aggression, right? They make the gearbox shift really hard. They make the engine as loud as possible. They make all the settings and the feedback tuned up really high. Audi doesn't do that, right? Whether it's the RS6 or whether it's this, everything is a little more muted. The engine, it's just not that loud. It has a decent tone, but it's quiet. The air suspension, even in its stiffest mode, which it's in right now, is still pretty compliant and comfortable. All of the steering and stuff is all very kind of muted and slightly digital. And that doesn't mean it's not very fast. It just means that Audis aren't aggressive in the way that Lamborghinis are. Just look at the Huracan versus the R8. It's basically the same type of comparison. For a lot of people, the R8 is actually the better car than the Huracan, but people don't typically buy supercars to not be aggressive, if you feel me. Oh good, this truck is going right, which means we will go left. These roads are kind of messy after the rain. That's why I'm glad we have an SUV and not a low car. When the engine comes on the boil, it kicks pretty hard. Your peak torque is 2,000 RPM, peak power is 6,000 RPM, so you've got quite a wide power band to work with. You know, for a brand new car, these windshield wipers suck. This thing came to me with 600 miles on the clock, and somehow these windshield wipers are already hosed. I don't understand that. The brakes excellent, just like in the Urus. And compared to some of the hardcore sports car brakes, the fact that they are ceramic doesn't seem to affect their everyday usability. The tuning of the pad and the booster and the pedal, it's not like you need to get a bunch of heat in them to get them to work, right? They work right away. They have good feel even when they are cold. The air suspension really smooths everything out. You can feel it doing its thing, and it's got this sort of anti-dive technology. So when you brake, it keeps the nose from really diving into that brakes. Like I'll just test here. It really keeps things very flat. And then when you come to a stop, it pauses, and you can feel it go and kind of reset itself to level. Nothing. It's very strange that the spec sheet says peak torque is at 2,000, but if you smash the gas from a dig, when you cross 2,000, not much really happens. It's when you get to 4,000 that it all of a sudden gets up and boogies. And it's really interesting that how unimportant the extra power is unless you happen to be doing something that requires full throttle. If you're just driving it around, for instance, I've been driving this car for 4 days just on the highway and around town, you're using 10-15% of the throttle at any given time. You're just not using the extra power. And the S8 is significantly cheaper, like tens of thousands of dollars cheaper. And so if you're not going to really take the opportunity to go really fast, getting the RS variant of the car, it doesn't really get you all that much. I'm going to turn around, not follow these people, go back up. There's a good turnaround spot here. We can demonstrate the rear steer. Ooh, rock slide. Here's where your ground clearance comes in handy. Yeah, that one's kind of nasty. It's the wrong day to be in a GT3 on this hill. Now, I could have swore I put this in, I'm in dynamic, but I'm not in RS mode. Now I put it in RS mode and I get my fighter plane gauges going. We'll see, rear steer, tighten the turning radius. Very good. These RS gauges are weird. They're vertically oriented and they come down from the top. I can see why they made that decision, but it's a little funky to get used to. Wide car, but room to get around the rock. It's really an interesting sensation to feel how the air suspension manages the weight transfer. It feels always like it's just a little hair behind your intention. It works, it gets you there, and it does help shift that weight through the corner, but it's just a hair behind you. Other bit of advice for this car is you must turn off the lane departure control, which is insanely aggressive and in many cases makes the car totally undrivable. I've been consistent about this for years. If you are unable to keep a car between two painted lines, then you should have no license at all. That is not a system that human drivers should need, and it actually makes the driving experience awful. So that needs to be turned off. Fortunately, it's about 2 clicks into the menu, not more. Speaking of clicks into the menu, pretty much everything in this car is a touch screen. That is suboptimal. It's not a bad interface. The screen is fast and responsive, and for the most part, well laid out. But there's certain things that would be much better with buttons. There are sub-seat adjustment menus that would be better as a pad on the side of the seat, right? The thigh extensions, for instance, would be better as a button on the side of the seat. Temperature controls would be better as scroll knobs than as touchscreens. Stuff like that. I wish they wouldn't do it, but if they're going to do it, at least the screen is good visibility, good legibility, and fast. It's a wet road. Wet and dirty. There's a joke in there somewhere. All right, so you get the idea. Bottom line, to answer the question of the day, are you getting an Urus for 60% of the price? Honestly, kinda, yeah, but without that visual impact of Lamborghini. I've always said that the Urus is the Lamborghini for people who want to drive their Lamborghini when they can't drive their Lamborghini, right? You don't necessarily want to take your Huracan or your Aventador to the shops or to dinner or on a road trip, and that's what your Urus is for. It's so people know you have a Lamborghini, even when you don't want to make the personal sacrifice, the convenience sacrifice of driving a Lamborghini, which makes it kind of silly, even though dynamically I enjoy it. This is 95% of the performance of that car in all the ways that really matter. An Urus is probably quicker on a track. Are you going to a track day? If not, But when people see the Urus, they see Lamborghini. We are dumb monkeys. We are influenced by style. This may be that in a more handsome coat, but the fact is nobody looks at this. Nobody cares. Nobody, you're not visually impressing or even making anybody see that you exist. Now, if you're a certain type of driver, that's better, right? But if you're another certain type of driver, it's worse. So is the Lamborghini worth the extra money, air quotes worth, versus this? No, certainly not to me and not to most people that I know. But at the same time, the people who want to be seen in a Lamborghini, that is worth the difference, right? So I think this is a really nice car. And as far as the coupified SUVs go, I think it's the least ugly. I think it's a pretty good looking car that has room in the front, room in the back, room in the trunk. You don't have to give up much by having that shorter roof line and trunk space. And I think it's better looking than the Urus. And if you got it in the right color, you could make it look really cool. But it is stealth wealth. It's not cheap. It's $144,000 as tested, but compared to its Lamborghini brethren, it is an amazing performance value. So thank you to Audi for letting me have a go today. Thanks to you guys for watching, and I will see you later.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.